Hello and welcome to the World Wanders podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the World Wanderers podcast. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by you, the listeners of the show. Thank you to everyone who supports us on Patreon. We are so grateful for your support. If you would like to become a supporter of the World Wanderers podcast and in return receive extra goodies such as copies of our ebooks, postcards from all over the world, and one-on-one conversations with Ryan and myself, you can join us over at patreon.com/theworldwanderers. Thanks in advance for your support. So on to today's episode of the podcast. We are very excited to be joined by Denise Chaykun, who is the president and founder of Magical Mystery Tours. And we just recently got introduced to Denise through mutual connections outside of our travel world and found that we have businesses that align really nicely and we have the same passions. So we connected with Denise and we were able to talk about her love of travel, her time spent with her husband, traveling the United States and living all over the country, as well as how she founded the company, where the idea for Magical Mystery Tours came from, and what's next for that company, as well as some info on it, because it's pretty cool what they're up to. So I won't spoil it. We're going to talk about it in the episode. And without further ado, here is Denise.
We are very excited to be joined on the podcast today by Denise Chaykun, the president of Magical Mystery Tours. Denise, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk with you guys.
And it was really excited to get connected with you because I hadn't actually heard of Magical Mysteries Tours before, but it's such a cool idea for a company. The style of planning a trip where, just to give a bit of background, it's you plan trips for your customers, but they don't really know any of the details. They just get a letter with a week before, okay, here's the weather. And then you show up at the airport and find out, okay, you're going here, you're doing all these things, but it's actually customized to the stuff that you really enjoy. So such a cool idea. But also, we just happen to have so many mutual connections through so many various ways. So it's kind of cool to see that as we prepped for the interview.
No, I thought the same exact thing when you guys contacted me. I was like, how do I not know these people? We need to be buddies.
Yeah, we had the exact same thing. So it's really cool that we're able to connect. And we want to dive into everything that Magical Mystery Tours does and how you develop that and the idea and stuff like that. But we thought we would back up a little bit and start with where you first found your love of travel and what that sort of looked like.
Sure. Well, it all goes together with Magical Mystery Tours. So, I traveled some as a kid, but nothing crazy like Disney World, an international trip, a little bit of travel around the U.S. But when I graduated from college, I started working in sort of the nonprofit political arena. And anybody who's worked in that knows you travel a ton. So doing that, I really liked working in that area. But at the same time, you have this amazing opportunity to kind of go all over the place and meet different people and see different things and rack up frequent flyer miles. In doing that, I was just on the road, 20-30% of the time. And at that point, the more I was traveling, the more the travel bug really hit. So, I became pretty thoroughly addicted to travel at that point, which I was not a professional travel planner by any stretch, but that definitely opened the door to starting a travel company and just being a travel junkie in general.
Yeah, that's really cool. And what do you feel like drew you to travel? I think that as travelers, it's we can all relate to this, the feeling of loving being abroad or loving taking these trips. So what was it for you that, really drew you to that?
Well, I think as anybody gets started traveling, it's overwhelming. And we all still, no matter how much you travel, have that trip that's overwhelming. Or if you sent me to somewhere really remote in Africa tomorrow, I have to learn a lot and figure out a lot, and it would make me nervous and things. Whereas there's lots of other trips that hey, like, send me somewhere in Europe tomorrow, no big deal. Whereas if you haven't done that before, that's a little bit scary. So I think for me, just being on the road for my job and being forced into that, when I say forced in a good way, you get used to it, and you get used to living out of a suitcase, and you get used to being like, okay, I'm going to North Dakota tomorrow. Huh. All right. There's got to be something good to do there. What is it? So you just get in that.
What is it?
Oh man, I picked the worst place to say. What is in North Dakota?
Grand Forks.
You know what?
They've
They
got a nice
had
restaurant
really
there.
good popcorn and desserts. We'll
Okay.
go with that. But you know, you can find something interesting anywhere, and you just kind of get used to it and learn to go with the flow and figure things out and realize you can kind of go anywhere and do anything. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to take your entire paycheck. But just sort of switching from that mentality of a vacation is something I do once a year or something huge that you build up to saying, hey, if the price is right and the opportunity arises, you just go. It's okay. It doesn't have to be a once in a lifetime thing. So I think anybody who's traveled a lot, you just fall into that more. And I don't know, it's a fun mindset.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I can relate to what you're talking about living out of a suitcase, because I like always had a lot of stuff. I grew up in the same house, and I, went to public school, and then I went to college. So it's like I had a lot of clothing and things and like souvenirs from these small trips I'd taken. And so paring down my stuff to fit into this tiny like 65-liter backpack the first time I did it was this like very scary thing that I did. And then it just became super normal, and now it's pretty normal to me to not have that much stuff. And it's this interesting transition that you can make as a traveler where you're like, oh yeah, I just like live out of this bag and everything I own just like is with me. That's cool.
That's so funny. Absolutely. Like, I don't own anything bigger than a carry-on now because, I mean, there's washing machines all over. Why would I need that? But yeah, that just, the process of packing when you're not doing it a lot, it's this huge, overwhelming thing. Now it's like, well, I forget toothpaste. You can buy it anywhere. You need like comfy shoes. Like, you just do it and it's gonna be okay. But there's nothing wrong with thinking that's hard or having to get used to that. But yeah, it just takes practice and then you get there.
Yeah. Same with that first backpacking trip. I packed like every single toiletry ever. I'm like, is there like toilet paper? Are there tampons? Like, do people in Europe have tampons? Like, I don't know.
What brand? I don't know. What language? Yeah. So like, you guys beat me. I'm not much of a backpacker. The one time I have backpacked, I got mocked for having a backpack that was about as big as I was. But maybe someday I'll get there.
Yeah, that's kind of Amanda's style as well. The gigantic backpack that's torso sized.
It's not that big.
It's a good workout.
Hey, no, it's not that big.
So when did you start to get the idea for planning trips for other peoples, and how other people, not peoples? How did, and then what was kind of the story behind going from idea to, hey, I'm going to start Magical Mystery Tours?
So I wish I could tell you it was this grand plan and I was all thoughtful and purposeful about it, but it was super random, I think, as most good ideas are. But I was traveling a ton. As anybody who travels a ton knows, it's what you talk about all the time. You want to know where everybody else has been, where they're going, where they're thinking about going. So I had a friend who was super busy, and naturally we were discussing travel and all these places I was going and excited about. He's like, oh, I really need to go somewhere, but I don't have time to plan it. And to me, that's half the fun. So we started joking about it. I'm like, oh, well, I'll plan it for you. No big deal. It'll take me like an hour. Where do you want to go? And then sort of throughout the discussion, I was like, wait a minute. If I'm going to plan a trip for you, I'm not going to tell you where you're going. Just let me pick somewhere and it'll be a surprise. Like, give me a budget, but I'm just going to surprise you. And he went for it. And at first I was like, ooh, can you do this? Could I book a trip without you knowing where you're going? The answer is yes. This was a while ago, 5-7 years. So we went with it. And I was super nervous because, I mean, it's no matter what, when you're booking a plane ticket on a friend's credit card, that's a little nerve-wracking. But I kind of was like, okay, and quizzed him a little bit, like, where have you been? What do you want? Um, but during the planning process, it just built because, like, you go to work and say, okay, I need some PTO. Say, oh, where are you going? What are you doing? I don't know. Like, that's really neat and exciting. Um, and I pulled in my best friend. I'm a good planner, but I can be a little scattered. I'm always afraid I'm going to book something on the wrong date. So I was like, I need somebody else to kind of at least look at this with me and make sure this all adds up. So we had all the details. I probably spent more time on that trip than like any trip since then. Um, but we sent him to San Francisco, which isn't that crazy, but hey, if you've never been, that's an awesome, amazing city for East Coast people to check out. We sent him there, and it was this extra special kind of trip because there was this element of surprise in it. And once you're past like the kid at Christmas morning stage, there's not that many controlled surprises in your life where it's like something good's coming, but I don't know what the thing is. So yeah, it clicked. It was really fun. And then other people started saying, oh, I would do that. You should start a business. So, my best friend, Stephanie, who's still with Magical Mystery Tours, and I were like, okay, well, how do you start a business? How does this work? So we started very slowly and had some other wonderful friends and relatives who were willing to trust us and just kind of figured out how to make this work, the logistics of sending people around the world when they don't know where they're going. And it just grew from there.
And so when you're sending people to places like all over the world and they don't know, do you coordinate like visas if they need that, like travel insurance, like that sort of stuff?
Definitely. So it's very controlled. We would not have been in business this long if we didn't have all those details sorted out. Yeah, so like a visa, if there's a place where you can get a visa upon arrival, we'll have that all lined up. But there's some places we would never send people just because it's too logistically complicated, or we would never send someone somewhere that's like kind of unsafe or really, really pushing it. Going on a mystery trip is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be like some crazy, dangerous, like, will you come back alive kind of adventure at all.
Welcome to Liberia.
Yeah, no. I would never, ever get insurance ever again. Yeah, so we coordinate visas, things like that. We have a whole survey on our website that travelers fill out, and they can tell us as much or as little about where they want to go. So we've had people who are just like, send me anywhere, I'll do anything, like just do it. And then at the same time, we have people who are very much like, I like this, I don't like this, I'm scared of this, I'm scared of that, I don't want this, and that's all totally fine. This is your trip. This isn't us trying to push you out of your comfort zone. It's about you deciding if you want to be pushed out of your comfort zone and kind of tell us what that looks like. We're happy to do that. But it's very, very controlled, and we deal with anything from like allergies or varying like physical restrictions, things like that. We do travel insurance, everything like that. So yeah, it's very, very controlled and safe. And we want people to have an amazing time. It's not about scaring them or, yeah, as you said, sending them to Liberia.
So no magical mystery tour to Liberia.
No.
It's such a cool idea, though. So for Amanda and I, we've been effectively nomadic for the past year and a half. So we've had a lot of flexibility. We've been like living out at Airbnbs mostly. And I know, so we spent 8 months in Asia, and when we were there, there's like this urge inside of me to just like, we should just go to the airport and like fly to like Santiago or something, do something crazy, and just like completely change our plans. Because yeah, kind of like you said, we we live in a world where like so much is possible to control, which is an amazing thing, but you kind of lose out on that sense of surprise and excitement. So just being able to go to the airport without knowing where you're going sounds like such a cool experience, in addition to how great travel is already.
Yeah.
It really is. And I think anybody who's traveled much has gotten to the airport and you just look at the departures board and you're like, theoretically, if I give you enough money, I can step on any of these planes right now and within 10 hours be in China or Prague or wherever. But you don't necessarily do that. So this is us saying, okay, we'll find this, we'll make this happen for you. It's going to make sense. It's not going to cost 10 times more than it should cost. You'll have a hotel when you get there. So yeah, it's just a good surprise, and surprises are great. But when do you get a good surprise that you know is coming?
Yeah, definitely. That's so true. It's kind of interesting because one of my really good friends who I lived with all throughout college, she always said, I just want to go to the airport one day and walk up to one of the flight booths and be like, stick me on the next flight, or, what's your cheapest flight going out today? Like, put me on that flight. Don't tell me where I'm going type thing. It's kind of that same concept, like this craving of, something that you don't know what's coming, or that's kind of unexpected, and that you can just have this like enjoyable surprise. So yeah, it's a super cool concept.
Definitely. So my husband and I actually did a mystery trip for our honeymoon, and I got to experience it firsthand. I mean, how could I have not done a mystery trip? But the suspense is ridiculous. Like, I was looking at maps, and I know every single mystery trip that's ever gone out with our company. So it was killing me. I had the weather report. I was trying really hard not to look at like flight schedules and really figure it out. But it was so much fun. And we flew out of JFK. We made it all the way through TSA without knowing where we were going. And it's this crazy thing going on in your brain. And we ended up in the French Riviera, which is not somewhere that was even on my radar. But it was the perfect fit for us. We wanted to relax, but like still see a different new country and experience some different things and see things, but not like we didn't want to be like in London or Tokyo or somewhere where you're just on the go. So yeah, every part of it was just amazing and really fun. But when you're a planner, as I think a lot of serious travelers are, you can't let go. So this forces you to let go and just go with it. And yeah, it's so much fun.
Yeah. Hearing you talk about that, I'm definitely like the planner between Ryan and I. It gives me like a little bit of anxiety to be like at the airport and be like, so checking in for this flight, like where am I going? Like, oh, we don't tell you. Like,
yeah,
where is this flight going?
It was like the nicest TSA has ever been, because we were like, look, we're going somewhere we don't know. And they were joking with us and teasing us, and they were so nice, but they were really excited for us. So, yeah, kudos to TSA for not spoiling that for us.
It's like the one time TSA was nice.
Yeah, really.
So you mentioned before that when people come to your website and they want to book a mystery tour, they fill out a survey. Like, what types of things do they fill out there?
So it's a mix. Some of it is the boring logistics. When do you want to go? Who's traveling? What are their birthdays? But then we get into other things that are just more travel preferences, like what's important to you in a trip. Is this about you just seeing seeing a new place, or are you someone who really isn't comfortable traveling unless you're staying in a 4+ star hotel? Where have you been before? What kind of things do you want out of this trip? Do you want to eat good food? Do you want to sightsee? Are you a partier? For us, when we first started planning trips, it took a little while to catch on that people have so many different styles of vacations. Because I think we all have our own way we travel and how we spend money and what's fun to us. And realizing that everybody's different And that's totally fine. That's like a concept to grasp. But then for us to realize, okay, this is how I travel, but what are the ways other people travel, and how can I grasp that in a quick survey so that we can give them what they want? I mean, it's a little tricky. Thankfully, I think we've hit it pretty well. But our trips are customized, so it's not like we have this grab bag of 20 locations we're going to send you and just pull one out. We really look at the information people give us and what they like and what they want out of their trip, and start from scratch and say, okay, where do we think they want to go, and what pieces do we have to put in place, whether it's hotel, on-the-ground transportation, activities, things like that, to make this trip special for them.
Yeah, I can imagine that that's a lot of logistics, because it's not like you're just looking at like, okay, you know, your budget for flights is $500. We can fly you, you know, this many places, but you want this type of weather. So, okay, we've narrowed it down here. It's like everything has to go into it. Do you guys ask them like how many activities they want to do during the time? Like if they want to be busy constantly, do you give them like free time on their trips, or like what does that element of it look like?
Yeah, so one of our questions is, do you want us to coordinate activities for you? And we have a good chunk of travelers who their trips, just with budget and time frames, tend to be like a weekend in the US to a new city they haven't been to. And that's still a really good mystery trip. But something like that, a lot of times we don't coordinate activities and people are fine to just wing it when they get there. But then for the longer, bigger trips, like you're going 2 weeks international, something like that, we usually do plan some activities. And we never build out like a 24/7, like you're on a tour bus and your days are completely full. But we sort of look at, okay, what are the key things in this place that you really need to hit? Or, I don't know, like if it's a new country and there's a particular type of activity that you really need to do. Like we'll look at which companies really are the best or meet the traveler's needs, or try to get restaurant reservations that you're not going to be able to make the day of, things like that. So there's always a good bit of free time and time for people to really put their own stamp on their trip and make it their own. But we also realize that showing up on the other side of the world and having no plan whatsoever isn't for everybody. So we're happy to kind of give you a kickstart there.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that you guys do it in a way where people can kind of give you the information that they're looking, like of what they're looking for, and then they can choose, you know, if they want activities coordinated or if they want their meals booked, that sort of thing, and then you can go from there with that. I think that sounds like it works really well.
Yeah, I think for us it's just really important that we're giving people a great vacation experience, and we've all opted into things where it's like, here's a set vacation on a set budget and gotten a deal or whatever. But we really value the customized trips and want to put together something special for each of our travelers.
So then there's a big moment of surprise at the start of the trip.
Mm-hmm.
What are people's impressions like after the trip when they come back? Do people say like, oh, wow, that was such a great way to travel, I want to continue doing it this way? Or is it more of like, oh, that was a great experience, and then kind of go back to the normal style of travel afterwards?
I love that you asked this, because I would say for the first year we were in existence, this was like the biggest question we were trying to answer. Because to us, if you do this once, that's great. But if we have repeat customers, that's when it's sustainable for us. So yeah, there's absolutely people who go once, and it's their thing. And like they do it, they're done. But we have a really high number of travelers who come back and say, wow, you guys got me. You figured out things that I wouldn't have known. It's amazing to have someone else plan my trip for me, because travel planning is hard, especially people who aren't traveling all the time, like people who are taking a trip every year, every 2 years, really building up to this. So we have a ton of travelers that we have worked with for years now that just keep coming back for mystery trips, Or they'll come back and say, not like a totally open-ended mystery trip, but I want to do Europe. We want to do Europe. We want to drink great beer. You fill in the details. So there's definitely people who realize that letting go of planning it themselves and obsessing over every detail in a way that when you're planning your own travel, it's like every decision feels like it's life or death. Like you obsess so much. And sometimes that takes away from the ultimate fun of doing it, that you're like, oh, well, I'm at this brewery, but maybe if I'd picked the other one, it would have been better. So yeah, we have a lot of repeat travelers, and those are the ones that I would say we're most proud of because they've done it, they love it, and the more we work with people, the more we get to know their preferences and what really works for them. So it's really fun to work with people again and again.
Yeah, it's cool because, especially with travel, but I think most things in life, there are kind of, like, we live in an amazing time where there's so much good stuff that there's like a plethora of like optimal or like good enough options. But it's easy when you're traveling to get caught up in like, okay, what's like the one option? Like I know for both of us, we've taken solo trips in the past, and I was like bouncing around like, well, I could go to Czech Republic, I could go to Spain, I could go to Central America, I could go to South America, I could go to, once you start thinking about options, it just expands into this gigantic thing. But that like, you would be happy with any of those options, but you kind of get wrapped up in thinking, what's the one perfect place I need to go? So it's a cool way to kind of outsource like all of that anxiety and worry about perfecting it and just realize like, okay, someone else is going to figure this out. It's going to be good because there's so many good options available for me. And then not get caught in this like loop where you're anxious, kind of like you were talking about, where you're always thinking, oh, what if I went here instead or did this other thing instead? It might have been better.
Definitely. And we all have those places that we've always dreamed about, whether it's like I have to go hold a koala in Australia, or I need to go check out where my ancestors lived in Ireland. And by all means, those trips are really important. But there's other times where it's just, I want a great experience. I want something new. Here's how I like to travel. Go for it. Yeah, and there's 100 options that work. And if you can let go of some of those details, there's some amazing places that just aren't on people's radar that we love sending people to. And I mean, there's so many times we look at what people tell us, and there is such an obvious answer on where to send them, but they might not even know it. So it's really fun to kind of partner people up with the places that we think they'll love.
What do you feel like are the places that people don't know about that you guys send people to a lot?
Good question. I can't say too much. But, it's changing all the time just due to prices and political climates and everything. Like for one, when we first got started, the Azores is amazing. So if people don't know, the Azores are Portuguese islands sort of in the middle of the Atlantic. There's a lot of direct flights from Boston, from other places, but it's kind of random, but there's lots to do. It's great food. It's not that expensive. It's not super long flight times. So that was one. Well, you guys will appreciate this. For a lot of Americans, they really haven't done Canada. And Canada's awesome. There's so much in Canada. And I mean, even a lot of it just depends on the person kind of looking at where they've been. And sometimes you just see a gap and you're like, oh, this place is not expensive. It's easy to get to. There's so much to do, but you haven't seen it. So we got to get you there. So yeah, it definitely depends. I don't want to tell you all the magic places where we feel like there's the perfect direct flights that aren't overpriced. But yeah, it's fun to chat among our travel planners and see like when somebody finds somewhere new that they're really excited about, and then can try to send other people to that kind of place.
Yeah, that's really cool. So for the past year, if I read it correctly, you've been living, or you recently settled down in Philadelphia, but before that, basically nomadically across North America. where did the idea come up with you and your husband to say like, oh, we're just gonna travel North America. We're gonna live in Airbnbs. We're not gonna do this living in one city thing.
I'm so glad you asked because you guys mentioned being nomadic and you don't often run into other nomads. I wanted to quiz you guys too. Um, so let's see. Yeah, so we just settled down. It's absolutely bizarre to like live in a house and have to buy furniture. Um, but so let's see. So we got married about 2 years ago, and we're sort of feeling the pressure to be normal grown-ups and buy a house. And at that point, we were living outside of Philadelphia. My husband had a place in Wilmington, Delaware. And we like went through all the motions of buying a house. Like this realtor was probably already like figuring out what he was going to buy with his commission check. And we like found the house that met everything we wanted. And I freaked out. I was like, I'm not excited about this. I'm not feeling it. So we regrouped, and both my husband and I can work remotely with everything we do. So like, why are we doing this? Let's wing it. So I proposed we go to Australia and New Zealand for 2 months. He freaked out and said no. He thought the time change and trying to work on East Coast hours would kill him, which is reasonable. And we have dogs, that there wasn't a clear-cut plan there. So the reasonable option after that was let's just wing it. We'll get rid of our stuff. We'll put the dogs in the car and we'll drive. So when we first started, we had like a 3-month plan to do Denver and Austin, somewhere else. And we're going to do like a month at a time in Airbnbs, and we would both just keep working and see how it went. So yeah, we made it a year and a half. I'm super proud. I would totally do it again. But yeah, we were a little bit burned out, but it was amazing. I'm so glad we did it. Anybody who thinks it's crazy needs to realize how hard it is to live in a house, take care of a house, and reevaluate all this. But yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, what was your favorite place that you guys lived in?
Everywhere.
I know that's like the worst question ever.
I am so used to it. We did Prince Edward Island for a month last summer up in Canada, and that was amazing. For anybody who's an Anne of Green Gables fan, you've totally thought about visiting Prince Edward Island, but it's just this gorgeous, beachy, little, amazing piece of Canada. We had this adorable house. It was perfect weather. It's gorgeous beaches. I think that one was definitely special, and I can't wait to get back up there.
Where in PEI were you guys?
We were right in Charlottetown.
Okay, cool.
Still on my list.
I
I
feel
love
like that
Anne of
would
Green
be a good
Gables.
place to go. I went a few years ago with my family, but we just went into Charlottetown for the day.
Oh, you gotta go back. There's all these great day trips. There's beaches everywhere. Charlottetown has a really great art scene. Like the amount of plays and theater and different things they have going on there is crazy for being such a teeny little town. So yeah, and I think for us, I hadn't spent much time in Canada, so it just, I don't know, it was neat to, I realized it's not that different, but it felt exotic and fun, and we're like, oh, huh, can you take dogs across the border? How does this work? And we just had to declare animals, and there we were.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well because we spent some time in Atlanta, Georgia, which is like, like the U.S. is not that different from Canada. Like our cultures are very similar, but coming from like Western Canada to like the Southern U.S., there is a lot of things that are different, and it did feel like quite exotic to me as well. It's like, oh wow, I'm like in Atlanta. Like that's cool.
Okay, I'm so glad you guys said that because it feels so silly to say that, but I think anybody who's traveled for any long period of time, you realize it's so different to settle somewhere for a month than it is to be somewhere on vacation. Like when you're on vacation, you eat out, other people clean up after you at hotels. But when you're somewhere for a month, you settle into a routine, you find a grocery store, you have to find a gym, you have to you just do all these things. Just doing daily life in another place is really neat. And it's not something that a lot of us do. And it's those silly things like learning that Canadians are super into boxed macaroni and cheese. Just silly things like that you don't know if you go on vacation.
Craft dinner.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Are Americans not into craft dinner?
No, Americans don't know what craft dinner is. We would say like Easy Mac, or it's different. Like you guys have a whole aisle of it. We don't do that. So it's just those little things it's so fun to see. And you don't have the same pressure as when you're on vacation. When you're on vacation, you feel like you have to move every minute, but it's just magic to settle in and live somewhere else and cook somewhere else and do all your normal things, but in a new place.
Yeah, definitely. We had that same experience while we were in Asia. I'm curious because you guys kind of did something similar to what we did over the last year. Did you find like a month in a place was long enough for you, like too long? Like how did that go with your work schedules?
That's such a good question. For us, a month was kind of the magic number. This is not terribly strategic on my part, but honestly, Airbnbs usually give you a really good discount once you hit a month. So that sort of set us up for that. We're like, well, we're going to be somewhere for a little while. Let's at least get a discount. But I've found a lot of other people that travel full time don't work, or they'll save up a ton of money and then they'll go do it. But we were both working, so it wasn't a full-time vacation. So for us, just getting somewhere, settling in, I would say our first week was a little bit of just chaos. Like you get somewhere, you have to quickly go get enough groceries to function, just sort of settle in. So the first week wasn't like all that much exploring, make sure the Wi-Fi works. And then it was enough time to settle in, have fun, check a place out, hit the major stuff, but also still like take a Saturday to sit on the couch, because sometimes that's what you need to do to keep your sanity. And then we totally could have stayed places longer, but I think doing a month was enough to keep us moving, and we were usually good to leave a place. And it felt like we needed to keep moving and keep seeing things. Like, I think if you're somewhere too long, you don't make the most of what's there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We kind of I feel like a month is kind of like a good number for us, although we spent 2 months in Bali and that was pretty magical as well. But yeah, the discount on Airbnb is massive if that's how you're traveling. It's amazing to be able to get that. Like the difference between 3 weeks and a month can be really significant financially. And then it is also nice. Like it gives you, 4 weekends to take off. It gives you enough time to, like you said, relax, which is something that I found the more and more that I travel, the more and more I need like kind of normalcy, even while I'm on the road. Like I need a day to just like drink tea in my pajamas and like read a book or watch Netflix or like watch movies or something like that. Like something that I would just do on like a chilly day back home. I need that regardless of where I am in the world at some point.
Totally. And this is, maybe I'm just neurotic, but for me, I needed to find a good gym and a good grocery store, or I was a disaster. It was just, those are the things that kept me sane. And there were some places we went that just had these absolutely lousy grocery stores, and I would drive like an hour to go to Trader Joe's and stock up for the month on food that we were used to, that meant we weren't eating frozen pizza every day. But maybe because you have so little structure when you're traveling like this, those were just the things I needed in my life to not fall apart and be grumpy all the time. So yeah, you just have to find what works for you. And it can be weird, and I'm sure it's different for everybody, but yeah, it's definitely different.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we have those things as well, where it's like, okay, it's like just a little bit more comfortable, a little bit better when we've got those comforts. I think a grocery store is definitely one for me as well. And either a gym or a yoga studio is also good. And then you said that you guys stopped because you were feeling a bit like burnt out and tired. Can you talk a little bit about what that looked like for you?
Sure. It's funny. It's like we never said we were going to do this forever, but I'm still like ashamed or something like, oh, we stopped, but we went for a year and a half. Let me think. So we tended to travel for like 3 or 4 months. Then we'd end up back on the East Coast and kind of, my parents have a beach house that they very graciously let us stay in occasionally. But we would kind of come back and regroup and change out our clothes and do doctor's appointments and whatnot. But yeah, so as I was saying, we tended to go for like 3 or 4 months at a time. So early this year, we did Austin, Santa Fe, and Denver. And then in the middle of that, my husband had to go to London for work for 2 weeks. And I was like, well, obviously I should go with you if you're going to London for 2 weeks. So we packed in a lot. And usually we planned our drives so we'd stop more, but it was like book it to Austin, book it back from Denver, which is tiring. So we had a great trip. We saw great things, but we were a little exhausted going out anyway. And then we had a couple Airbnb flops where the owners were just nuts. They gave us a really hard time. I don't know if you guys are finding this, but like I was doing much better with Airbnbs like a year ago than I was when we wrapped this up. So we had a good trip, but we just kind of hit the point where we were having trouble enjoying the places for what they were. We both just wanted to relax. And just kind of didn't want that pressure of, we drove all the way to New Mexico, let's make the most of New Mexico. So, yeah, after Denver, we were really torn. We were looking at Asheville, we were looking at some other places. And then we both kind of didn't want to admit to the other one that we were thinking maybe it was time to be done. But at some point, I forget which one of us kind of like let it slip, like, I wonder if maybe this is it. Maybe we need to be normal people and live in one place. But yeah, so somehow it just kind of clicked, like we're good. We've done this. It was great, but we wanna keep traveling, and I think we will still keep traveling. But yeah, we were done. So we bought a house outside of Philadelphia, but we really made a point to not stretch our budget, to not get some crazy house that is going to take over our lives. So we'll have a home base, which is awesome. At the moment, we'll see. But yeah, so we tried to restructure our lives in a way that we can still travel a lot, but feel a little more settled, feel like just have those comforts like Wi-Fi that we know is going to work, things like that when you're on the move all the time, you just don't have. So yeah, that's our how we stopped traveling story.
Yeah, I think that it's really easy as travelers to kind of like, I don't know, I think get caught up in the mentality of like, how many places have I been to, or where am I going next, or like, I'm a nomad and I live nowhere. And then it's kind of hard to come around to like, well, maybe I don't want to do this anymore. And it kind of can feel a little bit like failure, even though it shouldn't be, because everything we do in life is a choice, and we should be doing it because it makes us happy, or not like changing it because it's not making us happy. But I think it is hard to kind of like come around to those things. I think that that's something we've talked to a lot of people on the show about, and then we've also experienced ourselves. But when we got back from Asia, we kind of like, we were both pretty burnt out as well. Like we have a place in Canada for, I guess it was like 3 months, and spent a month in the States. And we're like, maybe we should just like stay in Canada for a year or so. And then we remembered Canadian winter.
Yeah, if there wasn't, if there wasn't winter here, we might have ended our nomadic times. But winter's a good motivator.
Winter's coming.
That's funny. Yeah, because with us, I was like, so I grew up in the Philadelphia area, but I was like, I will do nowhere colder than Philadelphia. And I need to keep like housing budget in check so we can get out of Philadelphia for a while during the winter. But yeah, I think a lot of what you said is really resonating. It's like you wear travel as some kind of badge of honor or something. And I think when you're traveling all the time, you have to trick yourself into certain things. Like, I can't have that much stuff. And it's great to not have that much stuff. But now it's like we have to buy furniture because we have a house and we have to sit on something. But I'm having these weird internal conflicts of, why are we buying stuff? We have spent the last year and a half making a point to not buy stuff because where are we going to put it? So yeah, it's a really big shift. And it's fine. It's good. And I think once you've traveled a ton and you make a point to stop, you're making a very obvious choice to be in a place, to join a community again, to have friends that you see all the time. And that's actually really neat and something you appreciate once you haven't had it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you can, once you've gone and spent time moving around from place to place, you come back and you can appreciate it a lot more. And you can also be like aware of some of the dangers of like, okay, I know that it's like, since I have this space, it's easier for me to accumulate stuff. I know that if I get into like, you know, some bad routines or bad habits, they're just going to continue on because I'm not switching things up, whether that's like diet or just productivity wise. So
Absolutely. And I think for us, we've just seen other people where like your house takes over your life and you're just fixing the house and taking care of the house, making the house better. And we're like, okay, well, we just moved in. So we're like, okay, we need to make this livable, but let's make it livable and then it's good. This is not our masterpiece. Like, it's a place to live, to serve us. It will not take up all our money, all our time. Like, let's just live here. We do not need this like gorgeous designer whatever. Like, let's just live here, be done with it, and keep moving.
Yeah, totally. Because if you end up having that kind of take over, I mean, financially is one thing. Then you don't have the money to go on trips anymore to travel. But then it's also like you're like, well, you know, I shouldn't leave this place that I've invested so much time and energy in. I should be here like enjoying my designer coach and not doing something else.
Yeah, and I think things like this just never would have struck us if we had just kind of followed the normal path of like, oh, you get married, you buy a house, you fix up the house, you fix up the house some more, you buy a bigger house. So no, it definitely makes you think through things very purposefully.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's like something that we can relate to for sure. And I think for now we're just trying to find furnished places so we don't have to buy any more furniture.
So for every single person who told us we were crazy in the last year and a half for traveling, like, no, it's really hard to buy furniture, find somebody to cut the lawn, all that stuff. So no, it's amazing to live in furnished apartments that you move out of after 3 months before you've made it dirty enough that you really need to deep clean. Like, I think give it 10 or 15 years and way more people will just be over this. I need to own a house and own furniture and all that stuff.
yeah, I think it is just like the habit too of like coming to a new place. You're only there for not too long, so there's not much accumulates, and then you clean up all your stuff and you leave. So it's not like this, like the kind of like you mentioned where you have to do this massive deep clean because you're constantly moving out of it. And also just, I feel like for me at least, there's like a sense of anxiety that comes from living in a place for a long time when you like see a scratch on the wall and you're like, oh no. But if it's like a place we've rented, I'm like, okay, whatever, we're leaving. Like, obviously, I'm not doing the damage, but if I like see stuff, if I see stuff like that, I'm not worried about it. I'm like, whatever, we're leaving in 2 weeks. It doesn't matter.
I know, totally. And so for us, it was really weird because we were traveling with our dogs, who are, we're not talking like Chihuahuas, they're big furry border collies. So we're always trying to make sure, like, we told people we had the dogs with us, like, we will clean up. They're not going to destroy your house, but there's going to be dog fur. But yeah, not having to, like, always being on edge, like, is somebody going to freak out that there's dog fur when we leave a place? That was definitely odd.
Yeah, for sure. And so what is like next for you guys, like personally, travel wise, and then also for Magical Mystery Tours?
Good question. Well, so I am 7 months pregnant at the moment. So that is definitely going to change our traveling some. I certainly think we're still going to travel, but we'll have to figure out what that looks like and how to get a small new person on board with our travel plans. I need to acquire more frequent flyer miles to get that extra ticket or whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a couple more trips coming up, but then honestly, like I feel like we have traveled so much lately that I'm good to stay put. Like I have never, in like the last 10 years, felt like I'm good. I don't need to plan something right now. Because I'm like, you know what? If we don't go anywhere for like 4 or 6 months, that's good. That'll be really relaxing. So yeah, I think for us, without a doubt, like hopefully if you talk to me in a year, we will have a whole new dimension of travel skills under our belts and know how to do the travel with kids thing. And then magical mystery tours, you know, I'm super excited about where we are right now. I think we have hit a point where we are really confident in what we're doing, and we purposefully started small and wanted to make sure we were doing things right. I mean, people trust us with their time and their hard-earned money, so we needed to know we had this, we were doing this right. So we're at the point where we're really trying to scale more and just do more trips and find more amazing people. Now that we're sure that this works and that we can send people all over the world and it will be amazing. So that's where I see us going.
Amazing.
Awesome.
And so where can people go to find more about yourself and Magical Mystery Tours?
So Magical Mystery Tours, definitely check out our website. We are, it's magical-mystery-tours.com. You can also check us out on Facebook and Instagram. For me, I'm not all that exciting. You can find me on Instagram at Chaykun, Chaykun. And yeah, so you will see personal travel photos there, but on Magical Mystery Tours, we like to feature our travelers who are out and about or places we really love.
Awesome. Well, it's been amazing chatting with you today. I feel like we've got so much in common, like we said before, and excited to follow along the journeys with yourself and Magical Mystery Tours going forward.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, Denise.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm excited to see what's up with you guys, too.
To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanderers.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanderers.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanderers or on Twitter at WorldWanderers1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.